Okay, now we're going to talk about.
Segmented worms!
Okay, thank you, girls. So, here are the different classes. You don't really need to worry about these classes, but we want to know the basics about segmented worms and the fact that they have segments, like your basic earthworm here. Very segmented bodies. Now, they have nerve tissue, their digestive tract, blood vessels that run throughout the body, but you'll notice each segment is divided by a membrane. And interestingly enough, each segment has its own little kidney, this nephron here, metanephron, that helps to clean out body fluids. Cephalization with the brain up here, the simple brain, and the mouth. Limited sensory organs, although they have these however you say that, these little projections that they use to move through the soil and that are also sensitive, quite sensitive to touch. And here's this gigantic Australian earthworm. Here's one. This guy should look sort of familiar. One of our specimens in the Dead Animals in Jars lab. These parapodia, these leg-like structures that are actually gills in these aquatic organisms, the polychaetes. Leeches. Again, look at that segmentation. So this group includes some parasites, nematodes, which now the next phylum, the nematodes. These guys are not segmented. These are the roundworms. Aquatic, sometimes in the soil. Most of them are relatively small, although the one we saw in our lab was quite large. Again, non-segmented pseudocoelomates. Here's a tiny little nematode. Often they're in the soil just doing their thing. Sometimes they can be parasites of plants or even animals. Here's one that's been encrusted in some muscle tissue of some unfortunate animal. Arthropoda. Now this is a very diverse, extremely diverse group. As you can see, 2 out of every 3 known species of animals. All over the place. Segmented bodies, as we'll see, and they have a true body cavity. Exoskeleton with jointed appendages, like our trilobite here, this fossil specimen. Go back a long ways and again are quite diverse. Sometimes the segments are fused, like we'll see on a lobster, for example. And they have all these different kinds of appendages. So here you can see the head and the thorax are segments that are fused into one part, but then you've got this abdomen, which has this separate segments, these jointed appendages. Some specialized for walking, others for grabbing things, and others for basically sticking food in their mouth. Okay. Alright, again, cover with the exoskeleton made of chitin. Remember where we saw that in the cell walls of fungi? So again, that relationship there. They go through molts where they have to shed their exoskeleton if they're going to grow. And so if you've ever had soft shell crabs, what you're eating there is the whole crab at a stage at which it's molted and its body is relatively soft still. Takes a little time for that exoskeleton to harden up. Alright, open circulatory system. Here's some of our subphyla. Don't really worry about these so much, although some of the names like crustacea will look quite common, you'll recognize that. Horseshoe crabs, again this exoskeleton, these funky marine creatures. Here we see the scorpion, again nice segmentation in their body, specialized appendages for grabbing onto things, a stinging cell back here. That includes these are the ones that have 8 legs, includes spiders, scorpions, ticks, and mites. And here's a mite, these small things that can live on other organisms. Spiders, that 8 legs again. They're in the arachnids, which again, some segmentation, segmented appendages, multiple eyes. The spinnerets, they can spin their webs. Now here we have millipedes and centipedes, Diplopoda and Chilopoda. The millipedes having those 2 pairs of legs per segment. They're primarily scavengers, whereas the centipedes have 1 pair of legs per segment, and they're predators. They're going to eat other critters, insects and such. Alright, now within there, the insects, the most diverse group within the arthropods, the insects. They have 6 legs, head, thorax, and abdomen, with the legs always attached to the thorax. They often have a pair of wings, sometimes 2 pair of wings, or sometimes they're lacking their wings. Compound eye, antenna. Many of them have had the evolved innovation of flight, which has given them great advantages of escape and moving to new habitats. They go through metamorphosis. Some of them have incomplete metamorphosis, where basically the juvenile stage is sort of a little version of the adult stage, but they go through these molts. Again, they have an exoskeleton, so they have to molt. Other times you have complete metamorphosis, like in butterflies and moths, where you have the caterpillar, the juvenile or larval stage, that goes through a complete change, a complete metamorphosis to go into the adult stage. Okay, so just looking at an example here within the animal kingdom, the phylum Arthropods, the Hexapoda, and within them the insects. And these are just lots of different orders within the insects, and we'll just go through these. You don't have to memorize these. Look at the beetles. The beetles are quite diverse. Earwigs, Diptera, the flies, you can see they're quite diverse as well. The Hemiptera, I like to say that. The Hymenoptera, basically wasps and bees and ants, quite diverse group. A lot of them are colonial organisms, ones that live in large groups. Isoptera, the termites, we had fun with them a little earlier, eviscerating them. And the lovely Lepidoptera, the butterflies and moths. Dragonflies, two pairs of wings on them. These long bodies, these go way back. They've been around a long time. Orthoptera, the Phasmida, the walking sticks. Body lice, louse, and fleas. Silverfish, sometimes you see those in their house scuttling around. They're kind of creepy looking, but actually they're kind of handy in that they eat other bugs. They're predators. Caddisflies, okay. Now within the Arthropoda, here's a group you might want to remember, the Crustacea. And these are crabs and lobsters and such. Krill, barnacles, barnacle bill there. Isopods, pill bugs. They're not insects. They're actually in the Crustacea. They have little gills, and they have to live in very moist environments in order to breathe. Okay, now we're going to move up to the echinoderms and the chordates. So, the echinoderms. Now, you'll notice here the echinoderms and chordates are what we call the deuterostomes. The other ones we've been talking about are the protostomes, and we talked about this in class a little bit. Again, they have a different embryonic development in terms of the cleavage of the cells. The formation of the mesoderm is a little different, and there's that first opening, the blastopore, which in the deuterostomes becomes the rear end, and in the protostomes becomes the mouth end. All right, the phylum Echinoderms. These are the sea stars and such. Now you look at that guy and you say, wait, how can this guy be bilateral? Well, he's pentaradial, but sea stars start as a bilateral larval stage, and so you might say at the adult stage they've sort of gone back to a more primitive state. They really don't have a brain. They have a nerve network, but not a centralized brain. Echinoderms, fairly diverse group. Again, we've talked about the sea stars, brittle stars, sea urchins, sea lilies, sea cucumbers. And again, these are the different classes. Don't worry about memorizing these. But there's your basic sea star, brittle star. You can see slight difference in anatomy with the sea stars. The arms all kind of fuse together, where here you can see the arms don't touch on the central disc. Your sea urchins, often spiny. You don't want to step on them if you're snorkeling or scuba diving. Feather stars is plant-like animal. Kind of looks like a plant, but it is an animal, an echinoderm. Sea cucumbers, these relatively large slug-like animals that you see in marine systems. Apparently they're a delicacy in Asia, Japan, and China and such. All right. And then, last but not least, the phylum Chordata, the ones with a backbone. And so here they are, way down here, the lonely little chordates. All the rest of these, again, are the invertebrates. And there's going to be a whole chapter on the chordates, so we'll leave that till then. Okay, bye-bye.